So I'm Jeremy Oki. I am the Senior Director of Product Management with Cisco. I've specifically been working very closely, you may have heard in the keynote, David Geckler talking about we work with Google for the last year on a joint solution that we've been talking about. We're going to talk about that in some detail today. And so I've been running that technical program as well. So let me start with a tale of innovation. We start usually talking about dev teams and 2 pizza box teams. Well, I couldn't find a pizza graphic on our internal site that was legal and official to use, so I had to change up a little bit. So let's talk about a tale of innovation here. I have some executives, they're brainstorming in an undisclosed location, nice views, probably around a golf afterwards. They come up with a great idea of what they want to do soon in this cloud world. After the idea is agreed upon, they all call their kids and see if their kids can develop it for them. Actually, they call the talented architects, they meet, discuss the plan, and they see if they can deliver on what the executives want to do. So now we have an innovation team of devs that gets to work minus the pizza. Okay? So how familiar is this to many of you? How many of you have innovation teams now working internally on cloud native microservices, et cetera? Show of hands. Okay? We see this a lot. Doesn't really change the fact that you probably still have all the kind of classical IT that runs your business and makes money, but you've got this new team that's working on all the new and exciting stuff. So what have we kind of announced between Cisco and Google? Really a consistent deployment environment. Develop and deploy anywhere, secure, consistent hybrid environment, innovation on your own terms. So that's the end of the marketing. Let's get into what this actually means. So I am part one of probably a multi-part act here today. Since we only have 45, 50 minutes in breakout sessions, we've kind of broken this in to multiple pieces. So first and foremost, later today, go to the first one today because it's my boss. Tell him I did a good job. Tomorrow, we actually have a technical deep dive that's both Cisco and Google presenting. It's going to be a lot talking about what we're going to talk about now, but leaning more into Istio and what we're working with Google on there. And actually, I put the arrow by the wrong thing. That's bad on me. IO 284 is the second part of this that's going more into the on-premise Kubernetes and the production-grade Kubernetes environment. So that's at 10:20 on Thursday. I put the chevron by the wrong one. So we've been talking about this for a while. How many of you heard about this since last August when we announced it publicly with Google? Anyone been following this since August? A few, about 20%, okay? So we announced what we were doing with Google in October. We have our multi-cloud portfolio, which is Cisco's bigger story about how we work with all the many products that Cisco has to connect clouds. We launched Container Platform in Cisco Live Barcelona in January. Stealthwatch Cloud now supports Google VPC flow logs in March. In May at KubeCon, we announced both our App Dynamics application performance management product supporting Kubernetes and Cloud Center, our cloud management product, also supporting Kubernetes. So all these things have been the incremental progress we've been making. So it may seem that a long time ago October was, but we've had a lot of kind of incremental progress that lead us to what the total solution is that will be, you just heard on stage, shipping next month. So a little detail what it is for half of you that maybe haven't heard about this. So Cisco Hybrid Cloud Platform for Google Cloud, official name. You may see it called CHCP in acronym in some places. The on-premise and Google Cloud that has a consistent environment capability, delivering security, hybrid cloud management, service mesh, and networking, connecting what Google does well in the cloud and what Cisco does well on-premise. So what does that kind of look like from component perspective? So let's start with on Google Cloud. Obviously, you have all the services and things in Google Cloud. Starts with Google Kubernetes Engine, doesn't replace that. You also have a number of services. Today, Google advertises platform services, 6 of them, through Open Service Broker, out to the other areas, such as an on-premise environment. So moving to the left, what do we have? Google Apigee. I want to have RESTful API interfaces. That innovation team that's working is familiar with REST. Your mainframe or some of your legacy applications may not actually talk RESTful API. Even if they do, perhaps there are some other nuances we'll get into in a minute when we talk about that use case. So I have those existing services on-premise. Maybe I want to run Kubernetes on-premise. My security officer, my application, data gravity, I need something on-premise, but I still want it to be Kubernetes. But I want it to be production ready. What do I want to run it on top of? Cisco sells hyper-converged and our traditional converged infrastructure, so HyperFlex and also software-defined networking. Okay, so a little bit more specifically, what are we doing in the products? So on Google Cloud, we are going to be offering in August the Cisco CSR 1000V virtual router on Google Cloud to connect that consistent connectivity between on-premise and cloud. This is Cisco's kind of heritage. We obviously have lots of other products besides, so it could be firewalls, it could be physical ASRs, CSI, ISR routers. It could also be that you have a Cisco device on one side and you want to connect to Google Cloud VPN on the other, also supported the configuration. Or you could be using a connectivity partner that's using low latency, high throughput Google Cloud Interconnect. So those are all supported scenarios. I want a consistent security experience. So combination of firewalls and defense in depth, that isn't enough in a cloud world. We can do things like intrusion prevention, but what happens when half the traffic goes off to the cloud? So things like StealthWatch Cloud, we have sensors on premise, sensors on GKE, and also VPC flow logs so that we have a full visibility because we have an extended trust model now in the security. And then coming down onto the Cisco Container Platform, having the option to run Istio either on Cisco Container Platform or GKE, but also Istio's promise. You saw some demos in the keynote showing its automatic visibility of both sides. So Cisco's been working very closely with Google to get that multi-cloud, multi-site capability integrated into Istio because that's important to us especially. Contiv is our container networking technology that then sits on top of the physical assets. So a couple of use cases, we'll get very specific now. I mentioned Apigee on-premise. So Google Apigee is also sold as a software as a service offering, but maybe you want it on-premise for various reasons. So we, in the solution, are supporting deploying Apigee Edge on-premise. And why would you need that? Maybe your application already does have RESTful APIs. Maybe it doesn't. So first and foremost, giving a RESTful interface on-premise to things that might completely live out in the cloud, your mainframe, your physical database assets. But more importantly, it also can do telemetry, control, who should be able to access it, reporting. Maybe you want to charge. The data you have on-premise is valuable to you. Apigee can create a front end so that you can actually charge someone every time they pull from your API. So start to monetize your data on-premise. And maybe that's your service all in itself, is getting something out past your firewall in a very controlled RESTful API way and making money from it. So second use case, I have an application on-premise I want to extend out into the cloud. The couple technical sessions I mentioned they're going to follow up are going to actually demo this use case very specifically. But say, for example, you have an application on-premise and your customers can put in feedback on it. Wouldn't it be nice to do customer sentiment analytics? Do you want to own that and operate that service? Perhaps not. You can go ahead and use services like PubSub, Cloud Spanner, BigQuery, Bigtables, et cetera from Google. And so the on-premise application gets extensibility into the public cloud to get those additional platform services through Open Service Broker and Service Catalog, which are built into the on-premise Cisco Container Platform. Lastly, the most common use case we hear from customers. Maybe you want dev on public cloud, Google Cloud, and you want dev on private cloud. Really, it's your choice. Customers are choosing to run things in various ways. One team may operate very differently than another as well. One size doesn't fit all. So I want to have a 100% upstream Kubernetes environment. I mentioned the innovation team. So your innovation team also was off in a corner running Kubernetes on their laptop, writing services, re-platforming your applications, and creating this new thing that the executives asked for and envisioned. Who takes the phone call Friday night at 2 a.m. when the Kubernetes application doesn't work? How many of you guys are all production ops, IT ops kind of folks and not developers? Raise the hands. Who's not developers in the room? This is a lot of developers. All right, so I'm talking to you IT ops guys. You know that you take the call at 2 a.m. when it's broken. So some of you may not even be familiar with Kubernetes. It's the world that the developers are in. They're platforming, they're testing, they're developing, they're pushing code, they're doing things like Agile and CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, and then they come to you and say, I'd like to take this production. And you start asking the obvious questions. Is it secure? Does it scale? Is it documented? Who needs access to it? All the things that developers don't necessarily care about. Security, developers usually deliver outcomes. Security oftentimes isn't built into the application. I think we're starting to see that change with regulations like GDPR. We're starting to have to build more into the application, but we still need also that umbrella of security that covers everything. So really this use case and what we're working on is you need to be able to deploy, the developers need to have something they can depend on, it needs to be production ready, and who do you have to support you when it's broken in the middle of the night. So this is a lot of open source technology, So we're wrapping this with support. So really that's the biggest thing I think that Google and Cisco have been working on mostly is Cisco has an enterprise class technical support capability. You may already have a lot of products from Cisco, routers, switches, firewalls, other software products, and you know you can call Cisco 24/7 round the clock and you'll get someone who will help you and prioritize it and get it fixed for you. So that's what we're bringing to this. We also obviously have a partner ecosystem that supports this and can design and install it. So I mentioned secure. We need to start doing things like proactive security, threat detection. Integrated VPN and connectivity is one bit, but also behavioral analysis. I'm going to talk specifically now about StealthWatch Cloud. So if those of you who haven't seen it, this is kind of a StealthWatch Cloud user interface. I come into a dashboard. This is a SaaS offering from Cisco, so you don't have to worry about running the platform. You just deploy the sensors and consume the intelligence and analytics that the platform provides. I see that I have a number of sensors deployed, so this happened to be from Cisco Live US last month. I have different kind of workers deployed. I have a Google Kubernetes environment I have sensors deployed to. I have some VMware. How many of you think that your container applications are never going to talk to anything that's your old applications, your virtuals, your physical? I don't think that. I think for a while we're actually going to be running in this composite mode where the new applications need to talk to the other applications that haven't been replatformed and modernized yet. So we have our existing data center assets we need to start getting technical and security telemetry from. And then finally, Google Cloud Platform has VPC flow log support now that has come out and been released. And so we have the ability to see the flow logs. The data you can't see underneath the cloud is exposed to via flow logs, and StealthWatch Cloud picks that up. So what does it mean? I get visualization. Who's talking to who? How are they talking? What kind of alerts? What kind of connectivity? How many observations are we making? Looking at networks talking to what kind of traffic are they exchanging? How many connections are active? Looking at the heuristics and past performance. The last 24 hours, I've had this kind of traffic patterns, and you can see there's checkboxes where maybe events have occurred that you want to click into. So, important thing, difference from a firewall or like an intrusion prevention system, the models are taking all these various inputs we just described. They're then correlating it with entity behavior. A firewall may say, this country can never talk to me because I don't do business in that country. Or, I have a pattern match. And intrusion prevention oftentimes looks at a pattern, and you tend to get a lot of false positives sometimes as that pattern changes. But wouldn't you like to know, every day I get these kind of connections, and I then send the connection off to Google, and the response back from Google Cloud is normally one packet that's 20 kilobytes of an answer. What happens if that behavior changed? All of a sudden I have 1 million packets going out to Google Cloud, and the response is now 40K or 100K. The behavior changed. So using kind of a heuristic pattern matching and the behavior analysis, we're looking at the security to say something's different. So this isn't just simply firewalls and intrusion prevention. And what do you kind of get? Now I actually have very actionable alerts. Hey, people who don't normally access this system have tried to do SSH into your GKE clusters. Drill into it. It's been accessed from a country that doesn't normally exist. Maybe this was a change in your business. You'll be able to quickly go and accept this or mark this as something that's actionable. If it's something that's normal, your business patterns have changed, your security ops folks click this and say this is normal. No longer, the behavior no longer recognizes this as an anomaly. So we have lots of information. The countries will load in with the IP addresses. Everything's clickable in here to drill in. What kind of endpoints, what kind of activity do we have going through the system? So this shows your behavior of endpoints and when your peak times in your business are. So this is an example of the inputs that are used in the model and the behavior analysis. What kind of traffic do we see? What kind of ins and outs? How many connections? Internal devices versus external devices. So it's graphing all that for you and showing what's occurring. Now, how many of you are very familiar with Kubernetes in this room? Again, about half, 2/3, all right. So how many of you prefer the CLI? For those of you who aren't familiar with Kubernetes, managing this via Kubernetes means you're using kubectl, kubectl, and these are the kind of commands you use to manipulate the environment, okay? So let's hop into some demos here and kind of show you kind of what we think is a little bit different about what we're doing. So your innovation team may be familiar. You don't want to replace their familiarity with those CLI commands. But I mentioned we now have 2 sets of operators. I have a development team that's job is delivering outcomes. I have an operations team whose job is to deliver a secure, stable, production-grade environment. So with Cisco Container Platform on-premise, I can actually do things like deploy clusters. So I have multiple clusters here. Let's make sure everything's still logged in. So I have 4 clusters here I've created. So Container Platform, first and foremost, is a multi-cluster management platform. I can create and destroy clusters via API, via CLI, via user interface here. Okay? So your IT ops folks can be the people who create and destroy Kubernetes environments on-premise. This also can be extended out. Developers could create and destroy their own. Your scripting, your automation could create and destroy it. One of the hard things about Kubernetes, though, once it's deployed also, is the upgrades, management, and logging and support of it. So Container Platform specifically shows you the cluster, gives you an interface. I can see how many master and nodes I have working in the environment, how they're set up. I can then do something interesting. I now have kind of a multi-tenant environment, if you will. I'm the IT operator. I see all the clusters. I now have a dashboard that shows me the health, the logging, the Kubernetes cluster management of the entire system. I now, though, can provide subsets. I can provide just a Kubernetes cluster to a dev team. So no longer is it the innovation team in the back corner on a laptop running Minikube or on an environment that's not connected to what can get out to the internet and to the public cloud. Now I have an environment I can expose to them. So they can very quickly download a token, and I can actually jump over into, if they're very familiar with Kubernetes, let me re-pull in that token I saved from Container Platform and log in. If they're very familiar with the Kubernetes environment, they're still seeing Kubernetes. You're now giving them basically a tenancy in an environment that's managed by production operations. They can now be the support organization. So if you need distributed roles, you can do that. If IT Ops is going to completely take it over, you still can learn and see and use Kubernetes. So all the things you'd normally see in Kubernetes are being managed by Cisco Container Platform. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about an application. I think you saw in the keynote that Google's passionate about hipster stuff. Well, at Cisco, we're passionate about socks. Holy socks. What do we have? We have lots of socks here. Super socks, color socks, cross socks, etc. So this is an application my innovation team wrote, and we're going to run into our cloud management platform product. Okay? So when the developers were deploying this, they may have deployed this using YAML files, text files that describe what the deployment looks like, how the configuration should work. In Cisco, we also have a visual cloud management product. So let me describe it a couple things. The Thursday session is going to go into a lot more detail on both Container Platform and Cloud Center, but what I have here is a drag and drop topology capability. Maybe, for example, your innovation team is really good at deploying their specific application, but you have another team that maybe is the experts in Cassandra or your NoSQL or your relational database or your production load balancers. Okay? So one team may not have the whole set of ingredients that it takes to make the system production. Therefore, we have on the left all the various components, and we're capturing the organizational best practices and automation of all the best components. Think of these like widgets. You may want a blue car, you may want a red plane. We might share some widgets. On the left is all the widgets. In the middle is where we're dragging them into the outcome, the blue car or the red plane. So this is my SOX application. Lots of little microservices, containers. This also could mix in. Maybe I need to put in a very traditional virtual machine-based message bus, or I want to drag out an operating system because I need a jump box or something, or I need to drag out an NFS file system. So the drag and drop capability environment means that people who don't necessarily know as much about these individual widgets may still be able to get the expert organizational knowledge and add it to their outcome. Okay? So now I have something that's reusable. And so when we talk about, I want to be able to deploy this, dev wants this on public Google Cloud, prod wants this on the internal Container Platform environment, or vice versa. So what we have in CLI and YAML files is technically accurate, but it may not also have guardrails. So this system also gives the ability to have tag-based governance. Maybe devs don't know prod should go here and dev should go there, or stage also goes here. Or maybe they don't know that data classification needs to go over an encrypted path and PCI maybe doesn't have to go over it. So those are the kind of things, the non-technical guardrails, if you will, that a cloud management platform adds into the technical capability the innovation team's delivering. Okay? So when I come and look at these deployments, the user can now self-serve, see the number of deployments. I have a number of things here. I have an Istio deployment, my SOX application that I showed you earlier. I've deployed it. So the developer can actually see, or this could be the admin, who deployed it, when did they deploy it, how much is it costing them, what's the health of all the different components, things like, can I add more, can I scale them? All of this can be done via IP, via user interface rather, via command line, or via APIs. So for example, App Dynamics or the other APM system you use of choice may be monitoring this application now, looking at the health and the user experience. And would that application need to be written to go and find the innovation guys, know their YAML file, and know how to scale and add additional nodes if the middleware tier is slow or if the store itself, the web server, is slow? Perhaps, but we already have a lot of those integrations built into the system. Also, when you call Friday night at 2 a.m. because it's broken, this is what the Cisco Technical Assistance Center working with Google will actually help you fix when it's broken. Okay? So all the services and visibility is exposed to everyone, not just the innovation team that happens to be the container and Kubernetes experts. And ultimately, we get it all in a nice dashboard that shows us what's it costing us, how much are we running, how often, where are all the different various clouds we're using, et cetera. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about how this works in practice and some of the other problems we have with enterprise applications. Okay? So over the last couple months, Google and Cisco and SAP have been working very closely together. So SAP is launching Data Hub. Many of you may be SAP HANA users. They just had their SAP Sapphire conference, so they've been announcing Data Hub and their HANA data management platform. This is a great example of an enterprise application. So Cisco and Google are also working with these types of enterprise providers because they're modernizing their platforms and software to use cloud native and container concepts as well. So SAP Data Hub has been completely built on top of Kubernetes. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail. I think SAP is here and has a session this week as well. But really, we're describing a hybrid environment now. I have a data gravity problem oftentimes. Data Hub is very specifically looking at AI and ML, streams and databases, apps with big data, object stores and IoT devices. Those may all be running out in Google Cloud. They may want to bring all of that back and coordinate it with ERP data, customer data, sales data, et cetera. So SAP Data Hub has components that are containerized that can run both on GKE and on Cisco Container Platform on-premise. Depends on where your data is. Some customers may have more data on-premise that they're actually trying to ship out. Other customers may have a lot that's being generated outside they're trying to bring in and do the analysis on-premise. So a good example of how we're working with this ecosystem to certify and support these enterprise applications on top of the joint solution between Cisco and Google. All right. So kind of summarize what we're doing and what you'll see in the next couple sessions. One, we're integrating. So some of the complexity to talk that we're not going to go into here, but on the Thursday session is, what are we doing southbound? Do you need persistent storage? So Cisco has already done the integration with the HyperFlex platform to be able to have persistent storage as well as with third parties, so that if you need to save data, you actually have access to that saved data. How do I connect into the network, both physical and container networking? That's built into Container Platform. How do I tie into the management? We're providing a management interface that has a holistic view of IT ops. And then still, we're not changing. I've showed you kind of Cisco's view of CI/CD, where maybe the continuous integration is Jenkins, and then we're using Cloud Center to deploy as the continuous deployment. But because I said I'm giving the developers a consistent Kubernetes environment that they can still access just like they were familiar with, if they have their own CI/CD pipeline, it's still 100% compatible with this. I think Google started talking about a Google Cloud-based build environment would also be able to talk to this environment. So we're not forcing customers or development teams to change the way they operate. If you have something you like that talks to Kubernetes directly and that works, the platform just gives you production grade and still gives you Kubernetes access to it. So all the open source APIs, software, and tools are completely exposed, 100% upstream. So it's optimized. Obviously, working very closely with Google Cloud, we're testing the open service broker. We're working to contribute to Istio and make sure that that works both on-premise and in Google Cloud. And then the support model is completely wrapped by someone you can call Friday at 2 a.m. to take your call. So this can be a little complicated. We obviously have partners and Cisco ourselves that can deliver services to help make all this work. Simply, this is an example of a quick start service we offer today. Install all the environment stuff on premise. That's what's in blue on the left. maybe those use cases you saw, help you work with those use cases, set up the environment. The innovation team in the corner might need help kind of bringing what they have into your team. So these services can help kind of deliver that capability quickly. So we have lots of demos. Cisco has a big booth on the show floor. Just kind of show you, we have some sample applications we're using in the demo booth. If you want to see something very specifically or dive into your specific use cases, the folks there have been involved very heavily in the solution. So they have the ability to kind of show you what this looks like. They have some nice 3D demos I'm kind of showing you. They'll click through. So this is kind of what it looks like. Very similar, but they have a nice, cool 3D kind of view to click through it. How many of you guys have heard of the Cisco Google Challenge? It was in a blog post yesterday. It may not be talked about too much. Anyone heard about it yet? A few enthusiastic hands. All right, so if you don't know what it is, Cisco and Google are working together to create a challenge. This is an event that's going to run for the next few months. If you go to this URL, you can learn about it. I've already seen some students say, are students eligible? Sure, but we'd like to see some customers and partners and dev teams and others. It's a great way for you to start, one, getting access to these environments for yourself. Two, there's some real money, some prizes. I think the top 3 winners, I know I run container platforms. I've donated 3 20-node 1-year subscriptions. I think there's some cash money. There's some Google Cloud credits and some other things. So the winners will be announced. I think this runs all the way into February, which is when Cisco Live Barcelona occurs. So you have months to kind of read on this, get excited, sign up. But that URL is where you can go learn more about the Cisco Google Challenge. All right, we also have, there's our booth that you can go visit, and all the places you can follow us.